everybody, and welcome back to the Jesus Loving Logger. Today I have my lovely wife, Caitlin, on with me, and we just wanted to give a little bit of our testimony of the point when we went from knowing about Jesus to having a personal relationship with him. And we've both been believers long before that, but there was a point in time when we definitely had a extremely increased level of intimacy with Christ. I'll put it that way. Intimacy, like you believe in him, but then when he truly works in your life in a miraculous way, it just helps you get that much more faith. And sometimes you think maybe something in life is happening bad to you and it's not fair, but it might be God's way of helping you to have that faith. Like if you read about Jesus, when they asked him about the blind man, they said, well, why is he blind? Is it because he sinned or his parents sinned or what's going on? And he said, it's for my glory. And you can kind of understand that when the man gets his sight, he has so much faith in Jesus. He's so much closer to Jesus than he would have been if he would have had sight all his life. Maybe he would be out wealthy, working somewhere, not caring about a savior, not having a need in his life that Jesus could help him out with. So even though it seemed like a bad thing in his life, it turned out for God's glory. And that's kind of what happened in our situation. So it's not the beginning of our story, but it's the beginning of the peak of our story. And so we wanted to share it. Well, so without further ado, I'd like to have my wife read some of this testimony that we have. And also, if you hear sounds in the background, it's our cow. She'd probably be talking to us on and off, but it was pretty nice out here, and there's a lot of bees in the garage, so pretty good atmosphere out here right now. Go ahead.
Okay, so we were married in August 2012, and in October we decided we wanted to start a family. I'd always dreamt of being a mom, and I couldn't wait to see Luke be a dad, and we were excited to start this journey. When you make a decision like that, you think it's going to be easy and it's going to happen right away. You know, you put it off and you put it off and you put it off, but when you're ready to be a parent, you're like, okay, let's do this, and you expect it to just happen. Well, that's not the case for us, and it's not the road that we went on. After a couple of months of trying came the ultimate sign that we were pregnant. So super excited. I took a test and it was negative. I took so many tests, like daily I would take a test. Then every month I would take a test, and my cycle never returned. Still hopeful. I kept taking a test, but I would get that dreaded line every single time that said no. I knew that it wasn't a quick thing for many people, and I tried not to be discouraged, but after a year of trying, I decided to get checked out.
Yeah, I kind of thought when you decided to have kids, you're like, all right, God, we're going to have kids now. And God sometimes teaches you patience, or he
Quickly
might want to...
reminds us it's his timing.
Yeah, and the more and more harder it was to have a baby, the more we prayed, the closer we got to him. So you can kind of see how he was working in our lives from the very beginning there. You know, we started praying, even if most of our prayers were like, why, God, and kind of whiny prayers, a lot of them were hopeful and just trusting him. And we did learn in that time, we've decided that we would trust him no matter what. And that carried on further down the line too. He kind of actually tested us in that when we got a report from a doctor, but we just trusted him the whole way, and we knew that God created the whole universe. He could do whatever he wanted in our lives.
So after a year, I got checked out. I worked for the clinic that my physician was at, and didn't really think anything was actually wrong, but just thought, why not get checked out? This shouldn't be happening. So my physician called me into her office, and she told me that my results had come in, and it showed that I had PCOS, and that basically meant that my hormones were out of whack, and instead of ovulating, my eggs were forming cysts on my ovaries. She said falling pregnant might not ever happen for us, and she discussed options with me, and we just kind of left it at that. I came home crushed. I remember just bawling my eyes out because that's all I ever wanted as a little kid. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a mom. So just the thought of that not being a reality hit home. I knew I was meant to be a mom. I knew that when I was ready to be a mom, it would just happen, and my biggest fear was staring me in the face. Suddenly, there was a very harsh reality check that my chances of that ever happening might not be. I cried a lot. I was frustrated, and I was angry, and I was very sad. I felt like a failure. I felt broken. I was worried that I would never be able to give Luke the gift of fatherhood, which I knew he wanted so badly. And this time was huge for us in our faith walk. Who else can you lean on when you feel that broken than the one who created you? He reminded me of who I am, that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and that I am his. I grew closer to Jesus than ever before. I'd always known Jesus, but this is when my relationship with him truly started. It makes me smile looking back at it now. It felt like the longest road ever, but looking back, I'm like, it was just a little smidge of time.
I know, and in that time, you don't realize what he's doing inside of you, like that he's drawing you closer to him. You don't realize the good that's going on. You're just like, I don't understand it, but I'm going to keep talking to him, keep leaning on him, keep trusting him. And that's what he's using the time for, is that's how he's making that happen. But
so God uses our hardest times in life to build our character. He is who I turned to, who I talked to, who I cried to. He knew my heart and he knew my desires. He knew my heart and he made me stronger for it. We continued to try for another 8 faith-building months. I call them faith-building months because we drew so close to him during that time, and it changed us. It seemed like forever, but looking back now, I'm so grateful for it. After lots of prayer, we decided we'd take the first step into getting medical help. I went back to my provider and talked to her about options. She said we'd start with Clomid, which is a medication that would help me ovulate. And then we discussed that probably wouldn't work and we'd probably have to go to IVF or adoption, which we were totally...
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But whatever it was going to be, we trusted him. But I think after we got bugs attacking us out here. I thought it was too cold for bugs. Anyway, I had attacks from the enemy at this time, because after we made our decision, I just had so much faith that he could use it for good. But the enemy started whispering to me, if you had true faith, why would you ever use something to help you? And medical help. Yeah. Like for the Clomid is what I'm talking about, because the Clomid, like she said, will help your body to try to ovulate, reset, whatever. And I'm like, man, we've been praying to God for this, and he didn't just give us a miracle and do it. Maybe we shouldn't do it on our own. We should wait for him and his time. But God's bigger than that too. God can stop that from working. He does to a lot of people, I think. And anyway, I just questioned that in my mind. Like, was this a lack of faith that we were trying to take this into our own hands after we'd prayed so long about it? And I was reminded by some godly advice that, God made doctors too, and he gave them the ability to make these medications, and he gave these things that would help us with our body. Like if you have a headache and you pray, God, take my headache away, and you still have a headache and you take ibuprofen, I don't feel like you're a sinner. God gave us the resource to do that ourselves. And sometimes when your prayer isn't answered, well, you get 3 answers to prayer. You get yes, no, or later, wait. And he'll use the wait to teach you patience or take you through something, because it'll develop you. And I feel like I was getting this attack, like you didn't wait and you were supposed to, but really God already answered it. He said, yes, there's something out there that'll help you and I'll lead you to it. And he did. He led us to it. But I was feeling like somehow this is in my own power, which God is in control. He's sovereign. And if he didn't want that to work, it wouldn't have worked. So,
So I took the first round of Clomid in August, and then September came and I went into the bathroom at work with a test. So I took a test, and then I just closed my eyes and I started praying. And I had taken so many tests and I had seen so many negative lines that I was almost numb to the whole thing. Like it just, I was so used to it. I didn't really have feeling. I looked down, and there on that tiny little stick was 2 lines. I began shaking and I began crying, and I ran out of the bathroom with the little stick. And I ran straight up to my physician and I handed it to her, shaking, and I started crying. I said, "Is this positive?" And she said, "Yes, whose is it?" And then I really started crying and jumping up and down. I was like, "It's mine." So she screamed and jumped up and down with me, and we hugged, and there was so much excitement. I raced home to tell Luke, and of course he was at work, and I had planned out this big old way to tell him, and he's dilly-dallying the whole way home. I'm like, "Just hurry up and get her." So anyways, he was super surprised and excited, shocked, because we didn't expect it to happen. We cried a lot, and then we drove all over that night after work. It was a work night too. Yeah. We drove all over telling family. We kept a close eye on the early days because she made it clear, like, it might not, like, when you're I won't go into that, I guess. Anyways, so we kept a close eye on everything, took lots of blood draws, checked my hormone levels, everything was going up, and we would have a successful pregnancy, which we did. Pregnancy was wonderful. I was so grateful for every nauseous feeling. I loved being pregnant. Every sleepless night, every bit of uncomfortableness, I was just so grateful. I was so excited. That Christmas Eve, we went down for an ultrasound. We found out we were having a baby girl, and we were super stoked. I had a pretty smooth pregnancy, and our due date was May 19th, and as we entered May, the anticipation grew. I went in for my OB appointment on May 6th, and my blood pressure was super elevated.
Like crazy elevated. It's like, was it 200 over 180 or something?
I remember. It was
they
really
said you
high.
should die or something. I don't know. Preeclampsia, is that what that is?
Well, if you wanted to label it, but we label it God.
Yeah. Yeah, she felt no different, by the way. Like,
yeah,
it was just
fine.
a normal day. We went in and
I think we went fishing that morning.
Yeah. And they're like, nothing wrong. They were just checking up on her. You know, they wanted to just do a checkup, last minute checkup thing. And she felt fine. And that was the only indicator. But she's like, I don't feel any different because, you know.
So my doctor put me on some blood pressure medication, told me not to do anything, which when you're feeling fine, that's hard to not do anything. Even walking across the parking lot, everybody was yelling at me, "You're not supposed to be doing anything." I started the medication, but my blood pressure just kept rising. The next day I called him with my numbers, and he had me increase my medication, and still the numbers went up. That afternoon he called and my numbers were still climbing, so he told me to pack my bags and come in. He had me go to the clinic, which was next door to the hospital, and he checked my blood pressure and it was still super high. And so he told me he was going to go ahead and admit me into the hospital and start me on some IV medications. So we walk over next door, like literally right next to the clinic where my blood pressure was super high. Got my blood drawn, got my gown on. I laid down in the hospital bed and they took my blood pressure and it was completely normal.
And we're talking like, what, 15, 20 minutes? It was like we walked from one building around the corner into the other building. She got ready. They were all ready for her and they put the cuff back on her and all of a sudden, yeah, normal blood pressure. Like completely normal. Like it went from, they said it was just unbelievable that it could hurt you and the baby, right? To everything was normal.
So they went ahead and started an IV anyways, and they hooked up the monitor to listen to the baby. And her heart rate was lower than it had been at all the appointments, but it wasn't like alarming normal or...
They said it was within range. It was just like 20 beats per minute lower than it had been at every other visit. So, you know, it seemed like, you know, it was different, but they said it wasn't beyond what it should be. So not real.
So it wasn't like a red flag or anything. They kept a blood pressure cuff on me all night long that went and took my blood pressure every 15 minutes. Woke me up every 15 minutes, and I would look up at the screen, normal.
And it was no problem because I didn't sleep. I was trying to sleep on 2 of those rock hard chairs, like, and with my head up on the bed next to her, and it didn't work. It was terrible nights.
It was a really long night.
Yeah. And anyway, we started talking about it, you know, midway through the night. I'm like,
I was angry.
Yeah. She's like, there's nothing wrong with me. Why are they keeping me? And I'm like, well, they can't force you to stay. And she's like, well, no, but it would be like against what the medical, what is it, AMA, against the medical advisement or something. Yeah. She's like, I don't know if we should do that. You know, I do trust my doctor, but I don't think anything's wrong, but I don't think I need to be here. And I'm like, well, let's just get out of here then. We don't need to be here. Let's go, you know. And anyway, we talked it over and decided we'd trust the doctors, you know, and it was probably no reason that we were there for, but we'd go ahead and stay till morning to see what they had to say.
So the next morning, my doctor came in to check on me, which I worked for him. We were pretty close, and we were both laughing. He's like, your blood pressure is just completely normal. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, we almost left.
And he said he wanted me to have an ultrasound. He said he just wanted to check on the baby and see how big she was and make sure that she was fine. And just a quick side note, every doctor I've seen since then said they would have never ordered this ultrasound based on the symptoms I was having. So, go God.
Yeah, because mostly the symptoms were with her, but something inside of Doc's mind told him that he wanted to take another picture. And he said it's not normal, but he just wanted to.
So we went in for the ultrasound. Our tech was amazing. After that incredibly long night of no sleep, I fell asleep during the ultrasound. Luke was putting his hand by me, making sure I was breathing. I'm like, leave me alone, I'm trying to sleep. Luke said he kept watching the ultrasound tech go back to one spot on the ultrasound. After the ultrasound, I went back to my room, and another doctor came in and shut the door, and he started explaining to me that something was wrong with our baby. And he said, I didn't think I'd cry. He said that she had fluid in her chest, and it was putting pressure on her heart and her lungs.
It was it's like a water buildup between the heart and lungs. So when the lungs are trying to expand, you can't expand into water. It has to be into soft tissue, and that's probably why the heart rate was coming down too. I don't remember if they told us that, but the heart was up against that fluid too, trying to, you know, expand. And then they told us when she went to take her very first breath, her lung wouldn't be able to push out against that water. Her lung could never open up to get her first breath.
So he said we'd need to deliver right away. And I just remember going completely numb. My mouth went instantly dry. He said they'd be calling a helicopter to come and get me because the baby would need high-level NICU once she was here. And the hospital they were sending me to was 4 hours away. They said Luke wouldn't be able to fly with me, so he left. He hopped in the car and took off, so I'm laying there by myself. Like, I told him,
I was like, I think if the helicopter hasn't left yet, I said, and it takes 2 hours to get here, I think I could beat it there. And anyway, everybody was very against that. They said that there's people on the helicopter that if something happened, you know, en route, they could help. And so
take me, you mean?
Yeah, because I just wanted you to jump in the car because they said we had to go to Davis to have this done. And I was like, well, then let's get going right now. And they're like, no, we're going to wait for a helicopter. It hasn't taken off yet. And I'm like, let's get going. Like, we'll meet the helicopter. They're like, no, just wait. I was like, well, if I'm going to be there for the birth, I have to leave right now then, because I said, I think I could beat the helicopter. And I did. I pulled in the parking lot right about the time I watched her helicopter land. But that almost went bad too, because I thought I knew where this place was and I didn't. And I had to call my sister's boyfriend, Ben, and he had a map and he walked me through everything. And I call him instead of Benjamin, I call him my Ben Garmin now. He helped me get there to see the birth of my baby, and I'm very thankful to him for that.
So I was super scared, but I just started praying, and every time I prayed, I would just feel this unexplainable peace go through my body. They were hooking up all kinds of things to me and giving me medication through my IV, and that made my hand burn like crazy. I think it was magnesium. I don't remember.
Yeah.
The helicopter finally arrived, and they got me loaded up, and we took off. And anytime I started to feel anxious or scared, I would start praying. And again, it's just this unexplainable peace. I was just at complete peace. In fact, I was so relaxed, I was falling asleep in the helicopter, and they kept waking me up. Are you okay? I'm like, let me sleep, people.
Meanwhile, I'm driving at extremely dangerous speeds as fast as her little car would go, and her parents were right in front of me. And anyway, yeah, I'm just thankful that we didn't get pulled over.
So Luke started calling everyone he could think of and asking for prayer, and they were contacting people asking for prayer. We don't even know the extent of people that were praying for us and our little baby, but we know it was a lot.
And I take this prayer chain to be part of the source of our miracle too. That I mean, that many people who are that close to God asking for something. It says, where 2 or more people come together in my name and pray about something, I'll be there and I'll be, listening. So I know he heard all these prayers, and it's amazing what prayer does.
So we landed at UC Davis, and they got me to my delivery room, and one by one family arrived and doctors started coming in. They started me on a medication to start labor, and then they did an ultrasound. Then they called in another doctor. And I soon learned that having doctors come into my room was only to have bad news delivered. So this doctor asked me, did you get any of those tests done to know if your baby had Down syndrome? And I told no. We decided we wouldn't have the tests because it didn't matter if the baby had Down syndrome. Whatever God was giving us is what God wanted us to have, and that life is precious no matter what. So it didn't matter. So he then told me that the ultrasound showed our baby had Down syndrome and a heart defect. He said that she was going to need heart surgery after birth. I remember my heart sinking and my eyes filling up with tears, and I had a cold washcloth for my burning hand. And I remember throwing that over my face and taking like this deep breath, and again that unshakable peace, unexplainable peace came over me. And I remember my mom saying, just pray, sis, just pray. And I pulled that washcloth off my face, and I looked at the doctor. I said, okay, like if it has Down syndrome, if she has Down syndrome, she has Down syndrome. If she needs a heart surgery, she needs a heart surgery.
I remember it's like your heart stops in your chest. You don't know what to think or feel, and you're like, God, are you in this or what? And then you realize, no, I got to keep trusting God. I might not understand everything, and we did. We talked about it,
but for me, it wasn't in my control to be like, okay, God, I trust you. It was
just there.
Peace.
Yeah.
Like, I've got this. Like, why are you questioning it? I've got this.
Yeah. And they hadn't put her on any high-powered medication yet or anything like that. It's just true peace. And for me, I was, at first, I didn't know what emotion to feel. And then I remember just praying, like, whatever you have for us, God, like, we're going to accept it. And I don't understand it. I just pray that you'll give me the strength to do whatever you have me set up to do here, because I didn't know how much we could handle, but I knew that he says that he'll never give you more than what you can handle, even though sometimes it might feel otherwise. And so we just trusted him. We said, like, we weren't angry at God, like, why are you letting this happen, God? We didn't get angry about it. And not saying that, if we had those emotions that God wouldn't have, he wouldn't have been down on us for that. He's understanding God, but we just knew somehow that God was going to be in it, and we told him we trusted him with this whole thing, everything that was going on, and whatever it was, and we just prayed that he would help her to live. And like she said, that doctor almost scolded us, like, you guys, this kid is in such bad shape, you guys should have probably gotten rid of it. And we're like, whatever God gives us, we don't feel like that's our...
I can't believe you didn't take the test because this
Yeah,
I've never been in this situation.
Yeah, he's like, man, I would have got rid of this. And I'm like, no, you can't say that. We don't believe that way. God gave us this child, and I've heard other stories about, people who said that they had problems similar to this, and they decided to go ahead and keep it, and they were just going to figure out, how to make it work after it came, and nothing was wrong with their baby too. So, don't forget to trust God more than a picture.
A human's life isn't for us to decide whether to take or not. That's God's decision. So if this is the life that God wanted this baby to have, then we were equipped through God to take care of this child.
And he was going to be there with us.
So I knew I had zero control over what was happening, but I knew God had complete control. And I reminded myself that this child was a gift from God. And it didn't matter if she had these complications. It didn't matter how long we had with her earth side. We would love her so much no matter what. They said if she did make it, she would probably have she'd need heart surgery and all kinds of stuff. Like, just the worst news ever. So they decided we couldn't have a natural birth. They couldn't wait for that Pitocin to kick in and all that. So they decided to do an emergency C-section. We went into the operating room, and there were so many doctors and nurses.
My goodness.
everywhere. And they got to work very quickly, and very quickly our little baby girl was born. She went past us on my left, completely blue. And Luke told me, she's so beautiful.
You couldn't see her, could you?
I could see them running with something.
Yeah. Well, there's a dozen doctors, circled around Caitlin, and then there's another dozen. What was there, 10 or 12? I have a
15.
picture of it. I don't know. There were so many doctors, and they were all circled around an incubator waiting for it to come in. Each one of them had a specific job that they were going to do, and everything just happened like instantaneously. So it was unbelievable. That UC Davis was something else. But
Luke told me, she's so beautiful. And then later he told me I didn't think she was alive.
I didn't think she was alive. It was the bluest blue I've ever seen. It was like a Smurf, but darker blue. And anyway, they just took her and they ran past me, and I looked, and she was limp. She didn't move. She wasn't crying. She was just completely limp, and they ran her out the door. And
sorry. And I told Luke, don't leave her side. Go with her.
I was like, well, I don't think she made it, in my mind, but I didn't want to tell Caitlin that. So I wanted to be there for Caitlin, and I didn't know if I could handle seeing what I thought was happening, because I thought it was already over with, and I didn't know what that would do to me. But so I was thinking about just staying with Caitlin, and Caitlin told me, no, go with her. So I went out and watched the doctors and everything they did to her for the first 10-15 minutes until they took her to the ICU.
So right there, a team of 15 doctors and nurses surrounded her, and they instantly stuck huge needles with tubes into both sides of her tiny little chest to drain the fluid. She still has the little
she has scars, and they had bags of water coming out of her chest. They had underneath of her little cart just bags filling up with water. Not sure where it all came from.
Oxygen in her nose, an IV in her belly button, a feeding tube down her throat, and then they just rushed her to the NICU. They took me into my room and told me I wouldn't be able to go see her until the next day. So I just relied on updates and pictures from the doctors and Luke and all of our other family. Our entire family got to see her before I ever got to see her.
That's why she's a daddy's girl.
She was absolutely beautiful and amazing. The next morning, my amazing nurse, I don't remember her name, Michelle.
Man, they were all amazing.
She came in and she was determined to get me in there to see my baby. I don't know that anything's harder than being cut open with this human you've grown, and you picture there. I'm sure there's harder things. It was hard though. And to not get to go see her, and I don't know, that was really hard. So she was determined to get me in there. She helped me into a wheelchair, and away I went, seeing Gracelyn for the first time. It was emotional. It's God is so good. there laid my baby girl hooked up to all kinds of tubes and machines, but she was alive.
Not just alive, she was perfect. Like,
doctors came in every morning to give an update, and they thought she'd be spending several weeks in the NICU. But every day she got stronger, and day by day a tube was removed, and her chest tubes, I don't remember how much fluid they ended up draining out of her. But once that fluid was gone, her heart was fine, her lungs were fine and strong. She didn't have a heart defect. She didn't have Down syndrome. The doctors were in amazement, and they didn't have answers for any of it, but we knew the answer, and that was God.
yep.
So why would my blood pressure spike regardless of medication until I was admitted into the hospital? And then it came down.
That's God.
God. Why would my doctor order an ultrasound when many other doctors said they wouldn't have thought to based off my circumstances?
God.
Why did I have an unexplainable amount of peace during the scariest day of my life?
Jesus says, I'll give you peace that the world won't understand.
And why did my daughter all of a sudden no longer have Down syndrome or heart defects that would cause her to need heart surgery or possibly not live?
So whether she had something wrong with her and it miraculously left, or whether something was up with the picture, which they got pretty accurate, amazing pictures of her, because the pictures they took before and after the birth, like directly before and after, they said it wasn't the same baby, and we're like, oh, this is definitely our baby, and anyway, they were pretty boggled at it, and it's a learning institution, so they want to learn everything they can and figure out why these things that showed never were a reality, because it was reality to them in their mind. And in the pictures, the previews they got said that things were going to be bad and nothing was. So
they couldn't explain what happened to Graceland. And after 6 days, they said she'd probably be in there for weeks to months. And after 6 days in the NICU, she was released and we got to go home.
I thought it was 7.
Nope. Brant was 7.
Was it? Brant was in longer than her?
Yeah.
Oh.
So the UC Davis doctors kept having us come back for more tests so they could figure out what happened, and they couldn't. And we finally had to start saying, no, we're not coming back down there. She's fine. God healed her.
Yeah, they had a brain team and a heart team and a DNA team and
genetics.
Just the regular doctors. And the very last visit we went to, we're scared. The doctor's calling, like, you need to be down here on this day. And I'm like, oh no, we got to leave again, because we'd been down. And we'd been going down. And finally we asked, we're like, what are you guys looking for today? And they had, the original picture before she was born. And they're like, well, we're trying to figure, this part and this part out. And we got the DNA specialist here. And we looked into the I don't know, they said something about how they looked into the easy part of the DNA to look into, and now they got to go down, and every little bar on the ladder of the DNA or whatever they had to start looking at to try to figure out. And I was like, how is this going to help her? She seems healthy. And they're like, oh no, she's unbelievably healthy. She shouldn't be though. And then we're like, we know why she's healthy. We prayed to God, and most of the doctors kind of shrugged us off when we tried to talk about our faith and that God healed her. But we knew that was what did it. And we told them, we're like, well, God chose to make her better. And like, that's just it. He has full control over the situation. And the doctors were like, well, we can't make you come. We're just trying to learn about it. I'm like, so we're coming and staying the night down in Davis all the time, or Sacramento, or the UC Davis, we'd go down and stay the night, and then, the losing a day of work and the gas money and everything. I'm like, and we don't have to come? I'm like, well, no, we're just trying to figure this whole thing out. And we're like, well, we give you an answer that we're confident of, like absolutely confident of. And if we don't have to come down, please stop calling us, So it wasn't like we were not thankful for what, their part in it, because they were there and they delivered, and it was wonderful to have that medical care that we had. They were amazing down there, just beyond amazing, like above and beyond anything we imagined that we'd have. They were great to us, but like at some point you need to just thank God for it and move on. And that's what we finally had to do.
So what's, now the rooster's talking.
Sorry.
What's even crazier is this girl's love for God. Her knowledge of God and her closeness with him at 8 years old blows me away. She has dreams. She asks hard questions. She knows things and has a relationship with him that's just insane. She was given to us and saved for a reason, and she's going to do big and amazing things with her life. And the start at her life was no accident.
Yeah, she's always asking me questions that, I feel like I could answer any question my kids have, but she continuously asks me things that I'm not quite sure about. Like, was it last week she asked me, she said, we all get to see Jesus when we go to heaven, right? Like, we physically get to see him when we're there. And I was like, yeah. And she said, well, do we have to take turns? Or can you, see him whenever you want? I was like, oh, you can see him whenever you want, I think. I'm not sure, not sure that I know the answer to that, but I'm sure you can see him anytime you want. And she's like, there's going to be billions of people in heaven, right? I was like, yeah. And she's like, so you can look down your street and just Jesus is talking to every single person? I was like, I've never even thought of that. Like, how did she dream that up? And I don't know, she comes up with these, she just thinks so deep into things. And yeah, like she said, she's had some dreams where she's talking to Jesus and he's explaining things to her. Just, it's not normal. Like, she's got questions that I can't answer, and I'm not sure how she comes up with them. And she's just in love with him. She always has been, like, from her earliest times that she could understand when we explained him to her. And yeah, she makes songs for him too. I'll probably put one up, but she's like 2 years ago now, hasn't it been? When she was 6, I think, she wrote a song called Push Back the Waters. And the song sounds great and it's catchy. And like, we're like, where did you come up with this? And she's like, I don't know. I just started singing it and I wanted to sing it for him. So we recorded the video. I'll have to put it up sometime, but that's just like her life. She sings to him and thinks about him all the time.
So to think that God isn't in control or his timing, it's our timing. I think also maybe God has a sense of humor, because we thought we would have to go through the same process to have more kids. And at 4 months, when Grayson was 4 months old, we fell pregnant with Brantley naturally without any help. And then 6 years later, with lots and lots and lots of prayer, we were blessed with little Trinity without medication. So we can get into their stories another time.
Yeah. But Brantley, he had a hard start too. But we kind of, they told us, they said you might want to make sure that you go with a hospital that has a NICU, because, they said it shouldn't have any impact on any further births. They said it has nothing to do with other kids, and they can't really explain why it happens. And they said it shouldn't have anything to do with it, but just maybe being careful. So we decided to go with a doctor in Redding, because they had a NICU there. And sure enough, Brantley, they handed him to me. I cut the umbilical cord. I was just proud as heck, and he started crying. But he was very early. Was he 5 weeks?
6 weeks.
6 weeks early. And her water broke, and she's like, "Oh, everything's cool. Just go to work. I'll be fine." And I'm like, "No, in the movies, when your water breaks, it's go time." It's like, I called my boss, and I'm like, "I don't know." I said, I feel like I should be going to the doctor. I said, her water broke, but she says everything's cool. Just go to work. She's like in denial, I guess. I don't know. And he's like, "Don't be stupid. Go to the hospital. Go now." And I was like, "All right, just making sure you felt the same way." And so I called I called the nurse down there, and because Caitlin was still not quite sure that maybe we should. She's like, "It's 6 weeks early. Everything's cool."
Was it 6? Maybe it was 5.
I think they told us 5 in the beginning.
We didn't know.
I think they told us 5 in the beginning, and then when we had him, they checked like his signs of age or whatever, and they said he was probably actually closer to 6 weeks early. But anyway, I called the nurse down there, and I'm like, "Would you tell my wife that we need to come down?" And she's like, "Oh, honey, my water broke, and it took me 3 days to have the baby," or something. I'm like, "Don't tell her that. We need to get down there, So anyway, we drove down there, and like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna have the baby immediately." And so he was very early, but when he cried for the first time, he popped a lung, and they said it's not as bad as it sounds. I'm like, that sounds horrible. And but anyway, you know, I wasn't too nervous. They said, don't be nervous about it, he'll be fine. And he had to spend a week in the NICU too.
Once again, I have a C-section because anywhere around here, once you have one, you can't not have one. And
so she's trying to like get up and walk
away from me
the next morning.
Get to see this baby again.
Yeah, and I'm like, you can't heal up that fast. She's trying to get up the next morning and walk out there to see him, and
I did.
And she did. The doctors at UC Davis said that was okay, and then the ones in Reading weren't very proud of her for trying to do that. But anyway, yeah. So God's had to save a couple of our kids, but I know He's in it, and I know He's been very good to us. But
so just coming back on it, on our start, there's a big difference between knowing God and having a relationship with God, and this is just our little testimony of when that change happened for us. And looking back, I'm super glad He took us through what He did, and we're so grateful that He gave us strength and peace and character, and we'll forever praise Him for it.
Yes, praise God what He did for us, and I think He took us through that. It wasn't without purpose, you know. It's had a unbelievable impact in our life, and we wouldn't be the same people we are now if we hadn't gone through something hard. But I heard somebody say the other day, you can't sharpen a knife on a stick of butter, you know, but when you get that knife against rocky things in your life, that's what sharpens it and gets you closer. But we have more of our testimony before that. Mostly we have, you know, we were both raised in a Christian house and we believed God was real, but I think without the human senses being able, you know, sight especially, being able to see Him, you know, you believe it, but it's hard to, when you're living your day-to-day life, to make it a part of your life, you know, because I have my own life going on. And back then I can say I probably went, you know, weeks at a time without thinking or praying to God, like, and then I better pray that, and then I would pray to Him, but it was pretty generic stuff, you know, like I believed Him, I knew that Jesus died for me, and I was thankful for that, and then it just, you know, you start getting a little closer, and like she said in the beginning, when we had to start praying and trying to figure out what was going on, what was wrong, why things weren't happening for us, we got closer, and then when we realized that He saved our child's life, like not a day goes by, I don't, like all day long, I pray to Him and talk to Him, and it's not all because of that, but that was part of the jump start, you know. It was, so anytime bad things happen in your life, it says in the Bible that we're supposed to count it all joy, and it's hard to read that. Count it all joy when you go through sufferings? Like, who can count it all joy? It's antithetical to the way we process, you know, those situations, but it seems like those situations are what makes you closer to Him. It's you know, hard times make good people, and hard things in your life makes good relationships with Him, I think. So that's just a little bit we wanted to share about where we're at with Him and some of the reason. Like I said, it's not our whole testimony. We had a lot of parts to our testimony coming along the way, but this was like she said, it put us from believing in Jesus to having a relationship with Him, and He's definitely a big part of us now. So thank you guys for listening. You got anything else? We appreciate you listening, and hope you come back and listen to Jesus Love and Logger again.